John Muir Trail. This is a picture from Ray Lakes looking out at the Painted Lady, one of my very favorite spots on the trail. So just a little bit about myself. My name is Louie Allen. Like I said, grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. Started working for the Sierra Mountain Center in 2015 as an intern to finish a degree in outdoor education. And yeah, pretty much fell in love with the place, fell in love with the job working for Sierra Mountain Center as a backpacking and mountain guide. I work with the technical winter and summer programs along with the hiking programs. Done 5 through hikes of the John Muir Trail, all guided, multiple section hikes, and a couple of parallels. I've also hiked the Sierra High Route, which parallels the trail and maintains an elevation of 10,000 feet, primarily off trail. SP Parker, who's going to do a little bit of speaking here at the end, sort of the godfather of the Sierra guiding industry, one of the original AMGA, internationally licensed mountain guides, founder and owner of Sierra Mountain Center, just an absolute backcountry wizard. The guy's done first descents all over the range. He's guided in Alaska, he's guided overseas, he's guided in South America. Check out some of his other presentations about skiing in the Antarctic and backpacking and pack rafting up in the Brooks Range in Alaska. But he's going to do some speaking later on about some of our pack supported programs, some of our mule supported JMT section hikes, which is something that he loves to be a part of every season. He's a good friend, good mentor, great guy. Well, let's talk about the John Muir Trail. So as you guys may or may not know, John Muir Trail is a 213.7 mile stretch of trail stretching between Mount Whitney to Yosemite Valley at Happy Isles there. Crosses through Yosemite National Park, Kings Canyon National Park, Sequoia National Park, Devil's Postpile National Monument, and a number of other wilderness designations, including, of course, the John Muir Wilderness and Ansel Adams Wilderness. Some of my favorite resources for the trail include the Tom Harris Map series and the John Muir Trail Topo Map Guide by National Geographic. Awesome resources. Definitely help us in terms of finding campsites, finding water, a little bit of history about the trail and the John Muir program there, and lots of little tidbits and elevation profiles, that sort of thing. Awesome tools. I never go out on the trail without them. So along with that, the Elizabeth Wenck book, John Muir Trail Guide, awesome place to get information on specific coordinates for campsites and a little description about most of the campsites listed in those other resources. Yeah, that's been a great tool to me in the past as well. So anyways, who is John Muir? If you don't know already, John Muir was a prominent naturalist and preservationist or conservationist, advocating for the protection of American public lands in the early 1900s, late 1800s. Originally from Scotland, he came over here as a sheep herder and was working in the Sierra Nevada. And yeah, got really involved in the biological and geographical sciences and study of this region. One of the first people to go out and actually do studies and say, yeah, there's glaciers in the Sierra Nevada, and these beautiful valleys and canyons and landscapes were carved out by glaciology and the movement of glaciers. But John Muir never actually hiked the John Muir Trail. It was actually named after him posthumously. It was conceptualized by this guy, Theodore Solomons. The trail was originally, what's the word I'm looking for here? Commissioned for construction, 1914 or 1915. And it took close to 50 years for it to finish construction. I think 46 years is the official completion time. A lot of the hardest parts of the trail were actually completed as New Deal labor as part of the government's response to the Great Depression. So some of the most difficult and most beautiful sections of trail that were probably some of the most complicated to complete were actually completed by men really desperate to find some labor and find a source of income. This was a government, basically like the PPP grant of the early 1900s. Anyways, John Muir Trail covers 10 high passes, including Mount Whitney, 14,505 feet listed here. That elevation changes pretty much every year as geographical surveys get better. But it starts technically at Happy Isles, down around 4,000 feet, Covers Cathedral Pass, Donahue, Island Pass, Silver Pass, Selden Pass, Muir Pass, Mather Pass, Pinchot, Glen, Forester, and then of course Mount Whitney up and over. Lots of people choose to hike the trail north to south because it gives them a chance to acclimate. Sierra Mountain Center actually runs a program that goes south to north, and we actually have to start 30 miles south of Mount Whitney at the Crabtree Meadows, or the Crabtree Lakes Trailhead rather. And that does a couple of things for us. The first thing it does is it lets us get a permit. We actually can't get a commercial permit that enters or leaves Happy Isles out of Yosemite National Park. So we actually get picked up between Donahue Pass and Cathedral Pass into Tuolumne Meadows. The other thing that it lets us do is it keeps the sun out of our eyes because we're always hiking north. So that's great, kind of makes things more comfortable. And the other thing it lets us do is it lets us get the hard stuff out of the way fast. You know, once we've gotten, we do ask quite a bit more of folks coming on these trips with us because we get the hardest terrain out of the way early in the program. And, you know, you need to show up ready to hike with a full pack, you know, above 10,000 feet. But it does let us enjoy the program as we get a little more fit and as things go on. We get sort of those biggest, hardest days out of the way first. But yeah, this is sort of what the terrain looks like south of Mount Whitney here, right where the Pacific Crest Trail bleeds into the John Muir Trail as it comes from Mexico through the Sierra Nevada and on its way up to Canada, excuse me. We've got guests that come and hike this trail from all over the world. Lots of folks from the UK. We've got third-party coordinators that help us coordinate these folks with our company. A lot of the folks that are coming and hiking the John Muir Trail with Sierra Mountain Center are people that have, you know, hiked Machu Picchu, hiked sections of the Appalachian Trail, hiked some of the classic Spanish and French trails. And they're looking, this is sort of on their American tick list. People are coming from all over the world. Like I said, pretty one-of-a-kind spot here in terms of American alpine settings between the weather, the lack of serious glaciers. And we're making lifelong friends on these trips, right? 23 days with anybody is going to be enough time to really talk about just about everything and get to know everybody. You know, whether it's your coworker, whether it's your friend, whether it's somebody you just met from across the big pond. You know, these are lifelong friendships that we're making out here. And it's also a great way to unwind. My coworker Lauren here, having a really tough day of work, walking through the beautiful Californian backcountry and napping along the way. But yeah, so let's talk about what makes a John Muir Trail hike. Part of the goal of this presentation is to discuss this all in more of a topic-based way rather than a day-by-day. This is this part of the hike. This is what we do the next day. This is what we do the next day. I'm going to try and leave some of that to you guys to go and find out for yourselves, whether it be with a Sierra Mountain Center program or on your own. But we're going to talk about some of the big considerations on one of these hikes, and we're going to start with high passes and snow. Like I said, we've got about 10 high passes to deal with on the John Muir Trail on a SMC program because we start further south. We tack on 2 pretty small passes early on in the trip, and those are actually a pretty good warm up for some of the other ones. But like we said, you know, passes come with some variables. The big one being the amount of snow that accumulates on them and stays on them through July. After a big winter, like the winter of 2017, that's enough snow to linger well into the month of July. And that means that some of these passes have real alpine considerations for backcountry travel. This is a picture of Forester Pass. Obviously gorgeous, obviously intimidating. There is a perfect angled, maintained switchback trail that gets us up and over this, but it doesn't quite look like that. You know, at their best, these passes are a great way to get right up on the shoulders of the mountains, get some really special vistas, see these massive sweeping ridge lines that the Sierra is famous for, soak up some sun, pass the map around, have lunch, pass some snacks around, take some awesome group pictures, and just really be up at the pinnacle of that Sierra shining white granite scenario that we use to market these programs in this area. But yeah, where these become difficult and sort of at their worst, these can be true feats of mountaineering. Obviously, a little bit of snow here down below Forester Pass, middle of July. This snow can totally obscure the trail in some places, which can make for difficult travel and route finding, especially if you haven't been on the trail before. And this is a picture from the top of Forester Pass in a low snow year. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy, right on trail. And this is from the exact same place during a big year. You can see the trail is totally obscured. We've actually got some remnants of cornice activity down low in the right-hand picture there. You can see the boot pack stretching out ahead of us. The nice thing about these winters is a lot of times, by the time we're actually running these programs, the Pacific Crest Trail hikers have scoured out these big boot packs here. Got to be a little careful about which ones you trust, making sure you're able to make decisions for yourself. They don't always go where you want them to go. They'll also collapse if the snow is hollowing out underneath as the season goes on. So you want to make sure that you're, taking creek crossings, taking, cliffside routes seriously and making a conservative decision there. And those boot packs can be great until they start to actually get burrowed out like this, up to our waists in snow on either side. Hard to use trekking poles, hard to keep 2 feet next to each other at any given time. You can see the sun cups there from solar radiation have made the snow pretty difficult to cross. Here you can see the trail's been it's been found out over one of these big switchbacks, so it looks like a pretty straightforward sidewalk there. But you can see we're actually using ice axes here and kicking steps, sort of like a mountaineering activity, right? This is a pretty steep, couple 100-foot drop off. So Lauren's there offering a little coaching, offering a little support. Some people are using trekking poles as an ice axe. At times we've even advocated for people to carry ice axes themselves. Like I said, kicking steps in snow, sometimes you need to find your own way, especially if the boot pack's either not in a good place or not well maintained. Not uncommon to use a lightweight mountaineering boot or a beefy hiking shoe in these years so we can kick good steps, good boot packs for our guests and for ourselves. Also not uncommon to carry light micro spikes, like a Catula or a Yak Track, something just to add a little bit of traction on the bottom of our shoe. Don't really need a real mountaineering crampon, don't really need like a 10-point steel crampon or anything like that. And this can be a true highlight, right? Like these passes are pretty great no matter what, but overcoming one of these in a big snow year, that can be a pretty rewarding experience. Like I said, that's pretty much an act of mountaineering. And it can be a lot of fun, going down middle of the afternoon, nice soft cushioned snow. It's easy on the knees, it's easy on our ankles. If the trail's covered up, it's pretty easy to just scoot right down the snow. You can miss some of those switchbacks and cover ground quickly. Beautiful to see some of the lakes still frozen over. That amazing blue alpine color there. Some of the freshest water you'll ever get the chance to see or drink. You can actually see back behind Andrew here on the left, that looks a lot like a boot pack, but that's actually a glide avalanche crack. We never actually saw that slope slide, but that's a cohesive bit of snow that's pulled away from itself, forming, what we could call a crevasse or a bergschrund or something like that. Something we don't actually see very much of in the Eastern Sierra these days. But like I said, usually a pretty good boot pack that we can follow all the way down. Just got to take it slow, trust our feet, know how to use our poles. We don't want to sprint downhill or anything like that. It can be a lot of fun to move fast down snow, but obviously we're quite a bit of ways away from any sort of coordinated rescue. We will do some instruction on our programs for plunge stepping, which is a semi-technical skill for getting down steep, soft snow. Lauren doing a great demonstration here. But one thing that I'm usually going to advocate not to do in the backcountry, especially for folks who haven't spent a lot of time using ice axes, is glissading, or sitting on your rear end and using your axe as a sort of, or a trekking pole as a sort of rudder to control your speed as you slide down a snow slope. Lots of people see that as a quick way to get down. I have seen it play out quite poorly. This is a couple of recreational hikers that we met along the trail summer of 2019 on the south side of Forester Pass. The gentleman on the left had just had a glissading accident, sat down, was moving fast, and caught his ankle on a protruding rock, twisted him around, did a couple of flips down the snow slope. And when we met him, he was pretty much limping along at snail pace with his buddy here, trying to get to the ranger's station. And we found that he'd had a pretty serious ankle sprain, maybe worse, maybe some tendon and ligament damage. His ankle was swollen up good and black. And, he was easily 5 miles away from the ranger station, easily 20 miles from the front country, and definitely not going to have an easy time getting out no matter what. But their spirits were high. I don't know. It's not really worth it for me to be in that situation, so I'm going to advocate pretty strongly against glissading on these snowy passes. All that being said, definitely a highlight of the trip. Definitely the greatest way to get right up close and personal with the alpine terrain that the John Muir Trail is so famous for. Definitely something to look forward to, snow or trail conditions. And then obviously one of the best parts about these high passes is once you get off the top of them and you're done taking in the scenic vistas, taking your pictures with the amazing Sierra skylines, you're going to drop down into this glacially carved meadow. This is coming off Forester Pass down to Vedette Meadow down below. And by the end of the day, you're just right back below tree line, beautiful grassy meadows, sitting by the lake, sitting by the river, and just an awesome contrast in terrain from the middle of the day to the end of the day. Beautiful glacial polished slabs right down at tree line. Classic Sierra evening there. So we're going to talk a little bit about Mount Whitney here. I don't have a whole lot to say here before we switch over to part 2 of this video, but Mount Whitney is a pretty classic part of the John Muir Trail experience. Most recreational hikers finish their hike with the summit of Mount Whitney. If you can see my screen, see my arrow, this right here is the summit of Mount Whitney. This right here is the summit of Mount Russell, 14,000 foot peak just north of Mount Whitney. But yeah, this is definitely a highlight of our northbound hikes as well. We do a day hike out of Crabtree Meadows, right by the ranger station there with Rob and Laura. And yeah, like I said, we do a day hike, leave the tent set up, leave most of our supplies there, and go do a 14-mile round trip hike to the summit and back. Awesome place to get some R&R after a long couple of weeks hiking. And we start our hikes early, right? This is a pre-dawn hike. We're going to get up and make sure that we're hiking well before the sun's up, because it's about a 14-mile round trip day. And you get to see the sun come up on the lakes and on the peaks as you just climb higher and higher. Nice light packs for the day, just food and snacks and layers. Awesome views of Mount Hitchcock. And yeah, we had snow last year, and a lot of times in July, there is a lot of snow on the trail. This is one of the places where some of those switchbacks are definitely hard to find, and definitely a place where we've gone so far as to use an ice axe to cut steps for our guests and for ourselves. I've even used a rope through this section before. And part of the issue there is that we can't really time it right because we're on that slope so early because of the day. That snow is still quite firm. It's much better to hit these high passes right in the middle of the day when the snow is soft enough that you can kick a good step, but not so sloppy that you're going to punch through and be up to your knees soaking wet all day. There's Lauren chopping some steps. Get up above the snow. You've got awesome views of the surrounding ranges. The Kauai is off in the distance there. You could peek through to the east side of the Sierra over Lone Pine and see the sun come up. And the trail starts to wind its way back behind the top of Mount Whitney, back behind the Keeler Needle, the Day Needle, Mount Muir. Getting close to the summit. And the entire range just spills out below you as the sun comes up. And this is a southern view. The trail, you can barely make it out on the left-hand side, just crossing back behind those big cliffs. Hang out at the Smithsonian hut at the top. Sign the summit register. And for a lot of people, this is the end of their hike. So it's a pretty big deal. Take your pictures, big smiles. The rest of it's downhill, and you can go down to the Whitney Portal and get a great big cheeseburger. River crossings. So that if there's snow on the pass, right, and it's the middle of summer, we can generally assume that that's going to be melting down into the rivers. And big snow years come with big water years. Some of the biggest crossings that we have to deal with during a big year are the South Fork of the Kings River and the Tyndall Creek crossing. Both of those come rather early in a south to north hike, and both need to be dealt with by avoiding the standard crossing and rerouting close to 4 miles upstream. The nice thing about that is that the trail parallels the river the entire way. And so you can pretty much stand on one side of the river, look at the trail from there, and just keep walking until eventually the waterways braid out and get mellow. You can pick your way across. Some of the crossings are slightly upstream or downstream from the standard trail. Log crossings are pretty common. You know, as guides, we a lot of times need to do a little bit of coaching, maybe grab a hand through a slick spot or something like that. And the thing that I love to see is that a lot of times other hikers are doing this as well with each other. They're not just, you know, it's not just us that's looking after each other. And we've even gone so far as to shuttle packs, right? It's not out of the question to take someone's pack, move it across a difficult crossing, and then have them move across unencumbered. Sometimes Lauren thinks she can jump all the way across the creek. I don't think she quite made it this time. I actually think she might have hit the bank right after this picture was taken and fallen back into the creek, but we'll see what she has to say about that. Some of the crossings are actually quite shallow, or at least quite mellow. This is the alternate crossing in the Evolution Meadow. Really slow. Really beautiful clear water. You can see the fish swimming around your feet. And this is pretty much a daily occurrence. If you're hiking early in the season, you're pretty much going to be doing a big water crossing every day, or at least a couple. Some people choose to hike with water shoes that they can change over on one side and then change back into their hiking shoes on the other side. A lot of folks will just go ahead and get their feet wet and deal with it as they go. You know, in California, we've got quite a bit of sunshine, and so you can get things to dry out pretty quickly. Probably the worst river crossings are the shallow ones that are moving quite quickly. This is the Tyndall Creek crossing that I was talking about earlier. This is quite a ways upstream of the original crossing or the intended crossing, which is absolutely lethal in July after a big snow year. You know, these guys are doing a really good job of getting on their poles, getting their weight forward, moving facing upstream, wide stances. Lauren's doing a little bit of pack shuttling and spotting there. This is at like 7:30 in the morning too, just absolutely brisk. And some of the intended crossings can be gotten across, but they look like this, they can still be a waist deep crossing. And this is the best you're going to get for miles in either direction. We were lucky enough to have a tree down right in front of the water, which broke the current a little bit. Again, Lauren doing a really good job facing upstream there, leaning on her poles. But yeah, just kind of part of the game. Every single day we're going to be doing a river crossing. This is right at the end of the day after a resupply, after we'd already tackled a high alpine pass. And now we've got a waist deep crossing right at the end of the day, and there's no way to get around it. Weather. Yeah, so we don't always have amazing sunshine in California. 9 times out of 10 we do. But, we get it too. It's a mountain region, so we get storms that come in. The nice thing about the Sierra is a lot of times when it is going to storm, it's going to come in, it's going to kind of telegraph itself on the weather forecast. And then on top of that, it's going to telegraph itself in the sky. You can see the clouds coming for days before you actually get a big thunderstorm. But we can still hike. Pack covers are good. Rain gear is pretty good these days. We can do some hiking in the rain. Biggest issue is when these storms catch us when we are out in exposed areas or up at a higher elevation. That can actually be quite dangerous. I don't know who took this picture, but this was Lauren and I got absolutely smashed in the Mammoth area right at the end of a trip last year. And that was probably some of the biggest lightning and thunderstorms I've seen in the Sierra. And sometimes the best thing to do is go ahead and throw up your tent and just wait it out. But the issue is that a lot of these tent sites are these little flat, divvied out spots in the dirt or in the duff, and they'll flood. And sometimes it can be pretty tough to find a campsite when it's been storming. You end up looking like me here. We were pretty bummed. This is that same storm, and we were pretty over it at that point. I think we got rained on for close to 4 or 5 hours. But most important thing is to have some sort of shelter, right? If it's not your tent, one thing I love to bring on these trips is an 18 by 18 foot tarp. Really light Kelty tarp here. You can tie it up to trees. You can tie it up to trekking poles. Lauren and Barbara are in the audience here. They're absolute wizards at this. And you can cover an entire group, pick up hikers they're stuck out in the rain. All of a sudden, you just made a new friend. Maybe you're going to score some good snacks. But these things are just absolutely invaluable for throwing up in an emergency and hanging out. Stay positive. Storms tend to clear up pretty fast in the Sierra. Get your tent set up, get a hot drink, get your coats on. It's kind of nice. We don't get a lot of these storms in the Sierra, so it's kind of a nice change of pace. I always enjoy it. And then the next day, you can go ahead and do your yard sale in the morning, or someday, or some point in the day. Stop for a snack break, stop for lunch, drag your stuff out, get some sun. It's pretty funny since most folks hike these north to south. As we hike north, a lot of times after a storm, you just end up passing party after party that's got their stuff strung out everywhere. And they've got a battle story from the night before. Plant life. So I am by no means a botanist or a biologist. I'm not amazing with the names of wildflowers. SP is going to get on me later for that. But I did want to include some pictures of this during these big winters, and even early season any year. There's going to be some pretty amazing wildflowers up in the Eastern Sierra. We're really, really lucky to have that as part of our environment. And so some of my favorites here. This is penstemon. This is a gorgeous little purple flower. Whole fields full of this stuff sometimes. Indian paintbrush, brilliant red colors. This is apparently quite common in North America, but I've never seen it anywhere else but in the Sierra. I must not be looking in the right places. But that's probably one of my favorites. Tiger lilies. These are really special, really rare. I actually tend to find these at higher elevations. This picture was taken right up near the top of Bear Ridge, which is one of the only places on the trail where you go an extended period without being able to find water. So I was quite surprised to find these up here, but just an amazing color, and kind of as big as the palm of your hand, sometimes bigger. Some more penstemon here. A little more opened up. Columbine. This comes in a red variety, this white variety, and I believe there's a blue variety as well. And then at higher elevations, one of my absolute favorites is Polemonium, which is the Latin word for sky pilot. And this is a gorgeous light purple flower. I think it qualifies as a succulent. It grows right up out of the rocks, right on the side of cliffs. You see it on some really classic Sierra alpine climbs too, in the most absurd places. Just an absolute survivor of a flower. And that comes in a really cool white variety too. Sometimes right in the middle of a big patch of purple like that, just coming right up out of the rocks. Oh, and snow plant. This is a good one. So this is actually a plant that feeds, let me see if I can get this right. Snow plant feeds off of a fungus that feeds off of the trees in the Eastern Sierra. A really awesome place to see this is right on the intersection of the Mountaineers Route Trail and the John Muir Trail as it wraps up towards the standard Mount Whitney hiking trail. Right at about, call it 9,000 feet. These guys are awesome. They spurt right up out of the ground, right at the base of trees, like a big red tower. They're awesome. And you kind of got to catch them while they're around. They die off really fast too. And you get your normal assortment of fungi growing out of the trees at lower elevations. I don't have a technical name for this one, but it looks cool. And then one thing that I really appreciate is actually the dead trees in the Eastern Sierra. So when the when lodgepole pines and foxtail pines die and rot and get stripped of their bark, they leave these really awesome gnarled, twisted, streaked brown and white. I'd call them carcasses, I guess. But an interesting thing about these is they are more often than not twisted in a clockwise motion. It's really rare to find one that's twisted to the left or in a counterclockwise motion. And if you are of the inclination to have a fire while you're hiking at lower elevations, it's best to leave this wood where it is. It's really beautiful. It's really old. Use something else. Animal life. Quite a lot of critters that share the trail with us out there. Lots of deer. I believe that black-tailed deer and mule deer are the two common species found in the Eastern Sierra. And they are everywhere, and they are not camera shy. Just walking right along the trail there. Something that I always enjoy about the hike is there's a number of deer that have radio collars on. They've been marked by Fish and Wildlife to study herds and movement and that sort of thing. And every once in a while, every summer, we'll see a couple of them with a radio collar on. I enjoy that. To go along with that, during these big winters where the passes are completely covered with snow, sort of out of season, when deer are trying to migrate or get into different feeding zones during our big winter in 2017, come fall, one of those passes was actually Bishop Pass was frozen over, and the snow never melted out, and an entire herd of deer actually slipped and fell down the north side of one of those passes and killed an entire herd of them. And there's still quite a bit of animal remains there, which it can be gruesome, but it's a pretty cool circle of life to see how fast those are decomposing. And it was cool to hear about the predators that were moving in and out of that zone, and part of the circle of life. But yeah, like I said, totally not camera shy at all. And the bucks are awesome this time of year. They've got great big in velvet on their antlers, on their new set of antlers. Big and fuzzy. These guys are usually off by themselves doing their thing. They're a little more skittish than the does and the juveniles. I think this is right at the base of the Golden Staircase feature coming down out of the Palisades. Marmots, which are basically the scourge of the Eastern Sierra. Some people think they're cute. I think they're basically big mice, but they are definitely not camera shy and definitely not people shy either. They'll get right up in your personal space, ask for a snack. Sometimes they get given a snack. There's one that lives right at the turnoff from the John Muir Trail to the Summit Trail for Mount Whitney. And that is the biggest, roundest, most friendly marmot I've ever seen. And he'll get into your snacks if you leave your packs unattended. I do have a picture of Lauren, my coworker, yelling at one and chasing him off. I wish I could have found it. But we spend a lot of time chasing marmots away. And they're just kind of everywhere. Always looking for the next handout. Ground squirrels, golden mantled ground squirrels. Quite a few varieties of these. Lizards and reptiles. Quite a few snakes. None of them toxic so far as I know. We don't get rattlesnakes up in the high country. You'll get them down in the Owens Valley here in Bishop. But there's garden snakes and a couple of other reptiles. And then, of course, bears, black bears in the Eastern Sierra, and all of their color variants. This guy came into our campsite at the Kings Palisade Junction, actually chasing a juvenile deer. Juvenile deer ran straight through pretty much through our happy hour, if you want to call it that, having a snack before dinner, and kind of hung around outside of camp, kind of making a face at us like he irritated that we ruined his snack. But they hang around. Black bears in general are pretty confrontation averse. They'll hang around. They'll walk near you. You can see them walking up through the meadows above you sometimes. But the only thing that really sets them off is when you get between them and their cubs. I've never encountered one with cubs, but I've had quite a few encounters with them coming up the trail, coming down out of the meadows above the trail. And the best thing to do is just make a lot of noise. Go ahead and bang some pots and pans together, get your friends to stand together and try and make yourselves look big and scary. They're more like big raccoons just looking for some trash to stick their nose in. but they're certainly around. And like I said, sometimes they'll come out of the meadows. This guy actually walked, I think this was taken the next day. It was either the same bear or a different bear, but it was taken the very next day after those other photos. And this guy walked all the way up LeConte Canyon with us, just kind of minding his own business on the other side of the creek, walking in pace with us. Bird life, Steller's jays, really interesting blackbirds, really curious. See them a lot in the Whitney zone at lower elevations. And then obviously fish. We've got quite a few species of trout in the Sierra. We've got golden trout, which are specific to the Sierra, and I believe are a genetically isolated species, which is why they're so popular. They're obviously they're gorgeous with these golden underbellies. But here in the Sierra, we've got brook trout, brown trout, rainbow trout. Quite a few of the high alpine lakes are actually stocked with Colorado cutthroat. And if you've got the space in your pack and you've got the motivation for it, catch and release fishing in the high country can be absolutely ego stroking. These guys are big. There's not a lot of pressure on them, and you can kind of play what won't they bite on. And then mosquitoes, obviously not as fun to look at, but they'll get Lauren all bundled up like this on a beautiful sunny afternoon, wearing every layer she has. Trying to look positive there, but the worst part, that right around sundown, near standing water or slow moving water, is where these guys like to hang out. And then there's one other really special animal that hangs out in the Sierra that I always have a great time taking a look at, and that would be other hikers. These guys are great. This is some of the best people watching I've ever done. These are actually a couple of guests of mine that we had a great time with last season. But other hikers are, people are they're out of their element, or they're in their element, and they're cutting loose. You see people just having the time of their lives. All right, so let's start talking about other animals. Let's talk about how we take care of ourselves, food, water, etc. This can be kind of logistically complicated. Planning meals for 23 days. We split our hike up into four. We have 4 big resupplies, so 5 eating sections. Our first resupply comes over Kearsarge Pass and meets us on the trail at an intersection. Second resupply comes over Bishop Pass. Third resupply gets mailed into Muir Trail Ranch, which is the halfway point outpost on the trail. And then our last resupply comes in at Red's Meadow, right where the trail meets the road. At most, we carry 7 days of food at a time. Some people carry more, some people carry less. All of our food's got to get split up, put in bear cans. Everybody carries a bear can. These guys can be a total pain in the butt to start with, but eventually you learn to love them. They make really good card tables. They make really good dinner seats. Everybody carries a little bit of the food. Quite a bit fits into them. And we like to divvy up fuel and such too. We usually use white gas on the trail. And we budget about 2 ounces per person per day for our groups. And that tends to be enough to cook and boil with a little bit left over for extra cups of coffee and tea and that sort of thing. For breakfast, usually some sort of porridge or bagel, a lot of same but different, right? Some sort of carbohydrate in the morning, maybe a little bit of vegetable, maybe some nuts or nut butter in there to add a little bit of fat and protein. This is actually grits with cheese, salt, pepper, and red pepper for breakfast. Lunch is oftentimes going to be like cheese with fish and hot sauce on a tortilla, crackers and cheese, peanut butter and jelly, and snack nuts and cheese. But it's usually some sort of picnic variation with cheese. High calorie, high fat. And then most of our energy comes from snacks during the day, or most of mine comes from snacks, I should say. But I generally go through a handful of bars every day, just little, half-sized Cliff bars or Lara bars, a couple hundred calories a piece. And then I love to eat sugary snacks on the trail. I'll go through a bag of Sour Patch Kids or M&Ms, like, I don't know, every couple of days. And then in some of my weaker moments, I've gone so far as to carry just a straight up jar of Nutella, and keep it in a top of my backpack so I can get to it with a spoon whenever I'm sitting down, taking a break, getting a drink of water. But yeah, lots of junk food is kind of my MO, because we're going to burn it and we're going to need it, and you might as well enjoy it. And then dinner's generally some sort of grain, couscous, pasta, polenta with vegetables. We use lots of dried meats and dried vegetables through bulk ordering for some companies that we partner with. And you can get pretty creative with that. That's probably one of my favorite parts of the John Muir Trail, at least from a guide's perspective, is getting creative with the food and seeing just how gourmet I can make the backcountry while still not adding a lot of weight. Definitely try to stay away from like the backpacker's pantry freeze-dried meals if I can. And then we try to line up our resupplies with getting in some fresh ingredients. This is a little Italian appetizer here. This is one of my favorites. Fresh tomato, fresh mozzarella, fresh basil, balsamic vinegar. On the trail, in the backcountry, surrounded by mountains, with your friends. Doesn't really get much better than that. And yeah, mealtime is it's social hour, right? Like a lot of times during the day, like you're working hard, it's head down, you're sweating, you're going over big passes, you're focusing on not falling in the creek. You're trying not to think about how heavy your pack is, but this is like the time to get to know each other and unwind and make friends and really just soak it in. Yeah. You can kind of call the John Muir Trail just a long hike from meal to meal. One beautiful meal to another beautiful meal. And then water filtration. Yeah. So we filter all of our water on our trips. There's lots of people that don't filter water in the Sierra. Some people get away with it. Some people don't. Rule of thumb, if it's moving fast, if it's getting sunlight, if it's coming from a higher elevation without a trail directly above it or directly crossing it, whether that be pack stock or people, it's probably going to be okay. Personally, I don't treat a lot of fast moving water anymore, but in a work environment, absolutely. And on our guided programs, we're going to treat all that water just because we're not going to take any chances with that. We use carbon fiber gravity filters, and some people choose to use the SteriPens. I don't really like the way you got to learn what the different lights mean, make sure the batteries work. But gravity filters seem to work just fine. Carbon filters work great. Campsites and highlights. So this is kind of my last little section here before SP is going to take over and talk about pack supported hiking on the trail. But so I'm going to show some of my, just kind of a highlight reel of my favorite spots on the trail and some of the real, showstopper views. With that, a lot of these views are some of the places that get higher traffic. If you are going to go out on the John Muir Trail, if anybody in the audience here is actually looking to go out and make this a reality, I do encourage you to, and I definitely encourage you to stop at these places. But there's lots of ways to kind of get off the big affected areas as far as camping goes, and there's lots of ways to sneak off into the margins and find a campsite that isn't going to be, right up against somebody else or worse in an area that hasn't been affected, and then you're adding to that impact. I actually can't tell you where this is, but I really love this photo. This might be one of SP's, which is classic low elevation campsite in the Sierra with light on the mountains there. Great example here. Nothing wrong with this campsite, but you can see how affected this area has been. You can see the grass line, and you can see just how much impact is around these trees. There's no grass growing here. And this is pretty much any popular site. And we obviously need to make use as a guided program. A lot of times we need to make use of the more popular sites and these big group sites where lots of people pile up because we need the space. Anyways, Tyndall Frog Ponds, definitely my favorite campsite on the John Muir Trail, right next to Tawny Point, right next to these beautiful flat lakes. Frogs, you can see the frogs spawning in them at the right time of year. Lots of frogs in the Eastern Sierra. Ray Lakes here, absolutely classic. The Ray Lake Sloop is a great way to come from the west side, get into the heart of the Sierra, and then get back out on the west side of the range. Nice sunny camping right next to the lake. That peak in the back right, that's the Painted Lady. Absolutely gorgeous, just looms over you the whole time with Dragon Peak. And from the side profile, you can even see the Painted Lady in her features. It's kind of hard from this angle though. Yeah, there's a reason Ray Lakes is probably one of the most popular spots along the entire John Muir Trail. I think that picture there kind of just says it all. Leaving Ray Lakes, Fin Dome here, awesome little granite monolith sticking right up out of the side of the hill, right off the lake. This is Tully Hole, beautiful little green meadow. The trail comes from the right of this photo out of the Fish Creek region over Silver Pass. The thing I really like about this spot is it's kind of a connecting point for a lot of different trails and different routes. Right in the back of the photo, that low pass on the back left, that's the Silver Divide. That I can't remember the name of the pass, but coming up through the Sierra High route, that's the route that you come over. You drop over that big snowy pass and drop way down into the trees. And then after a big alpine day like that, it spits you out into this gorgeous little green meadow. There's always steam coming off this in the mornings. The Ritter Range coming down into the Mammoth area, kind of towards the end of our hike, quite early in a north to south hike. Awesome views of Ritter and Banner in the minarets here. Awesome views of the Ritter Glacier there, one of the last glaciers in the Sierra. I'm not sure if it's been deemed a permanent snowfield yet or not, but some of the last remnants of glaciology in the Eastern Sierra. And then when you're coming down through the Ritter Range, one of my favorite parts, one, because we're coming up to a resupply, right? That's always nice. But as we're coming down through this part of the trail, we go through the Rainbow Fire, which I believe took place in the 90s. SP can chime in on that if he wants about the exact date, but it's a massive burn. That's, you can see the wildflowers and the undergrowth growing up more and more every year, but just an amazing amount of burnt wood. These big standalone trees. And then another really popular spot to camp is the Thousand Islands Lake region. This is probably one of the most highly impacted areas in the Eastern Sierra, and for good reason, right? Like lakeside camping underneath Banner Peak. Are you kidding me? Of course people are going to camp there. But this is one of those classic places where there's some really good places to sneak off into the margins. If you pay attention to your maps, there's lots of small connector trails around Garnett Lake, which is right near Thousand Island Lake, that'll get you off into the side or off of the trail, just less than a mile or so. Really beautiful old pack stock camps out in the margin here. Awesome way to get away from the normal crowds and find a totally developed, totally good to go campsite. You just got to spend anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes looking for it. You can find these little trails that branch off. You can look for them on your maps, but there's these really great hidden campsites that are perfectly developed, perfectly good to go, that just minimize the impact and spread it out as these resources get more and more popular. Coming down out of the Mammoth region, Ruby Lake, Emerald Lake, a whole series of just trail-side lakes with beautiful blue water and snow fields dropping right off into them. That's probably some of the cleanest water you're ever going to see, ever going to put in your water bottle, fresh off the side of the mountain. And of course, Devil's Post Pile, awesome basalt columns. Muir Pass holds the most snow in early season. Awesome place to hang out in the middle of the mountains with the Goddard area behind us. And then obviously the Muir Hut on top of Muir Pass, built up there as a storm shelter. Great place to get out of the sun. Built in 1930 by the Sierra Club. Muir Trail Ranch, awesome place for a resupply. Midway point there, great place to pick up a couple of extra supplies, see some people that are working there year round. Those guys work all year all season in the backcountry. They do an awesome job resupplying us. They've helped me coordinate rescues out of there. They do a great job. Horses, first time you'll probably see a car on the entire trail. Views of the Kauias early in the trip. One of the most remote ranges. And then the Palisades region. And the Devil's Crags back behind. Devil's Crags, again, one of the most remote groups of peaks in the Sierra. Totally shrouded in mystery. Lakeside Yoga, kind of a cult classic for Sierra Mountain Center. Great way to start the day. Right here at the Palisades Lakes, just spilling down right from behind the highest concentration of 14,000 foot peaks in the range. And swimming. I mean, that's probably the best part of the summer, is hiking all day, getting hot and sweaty, and then hopping in a creek or hopping in a lake at the end of the day. Marie Lakes on a snowy year. Very beautiful, unfortunately very buggy. Bear Creek Spire in the background there. Profile view. Evolution region. Awesome place here to sit by the creek, the waterfall, the outlet of Evolution Lake, and watch the sun come down. This is kind of a tradition of mine, is to go and sit and watch the sun go down by the waterfall here over the Evolution Valley. We hike right down through that valley the next day. And then Lyle Canyon. And this sort of marks the end of our Sierra Mountain Center hike as we come into Tuolumne for our pickup, dropping down into this beautiful low elevation, gorgeous green valley in the morning, steam coming off the meadow. This is coming over the north side of Donahue Pass as we come into the boundary of Yosemite National Park. And this just kind of always feels like coming home. Beautiful low fields. You can just see in the background there one of those big granite Tuolumne domes sticking up. And yeah, that's where we end our hike there in Tuolumne every single year. That's pretty heartbreaking to have to leave new friends after 23 days hiking in the backcountry there. But yeah, I can't thank the people that I've hiked with enough for the awesome memories they've given me. I miss you guys if you're out there. I'm going to turn this over to SP now to talk a little bit about section hikes on the John Muir Trail and pack supported stuff. So we're going to try our technical switch here on the screen sharing. So SP can go ahead and take that over.
Okay, let's see how this works. Okay, you got it there, Louie? Oops, wrong slide, of course.
We're trying our best.
I had it queued up. Okay, how about that one? Are we good out there?
Got to get it playing for us.
Okay, I thought I was. I've got sharing going. You see it?
I'm not seeing the
See
big
the
slide.
title? I've got sharing going.
I see your screen.
We good?
Give it a try.
Okay. Does that go forward?
It does, but you're sharing the you're sharing something like a different view here. You're not sharing the entire screen.
Let's try this one then.
There we go. There it is.
Got it? Okay. Yep. Good to go? Okay. So, when I was Louie's age, I could carry a large pack. Wasn't a problem. But no, things change, and no, now that I'm older, I just can't carry the big packs anymore like the way I used to be able to. So this is where we go ahead and use some pack stock. We used Rock Creek Pack Station, local, known those guys since the 1980s. Pack stock, there's a lot of pros and cons. They're debated as to whether they should be in the era, but they do make it easier for people as you get older, don't want to carry the big pack, to be able to get out there. You can do it in a little bit of luxury, take along a few more things like a chair and a table, and it just makes things a little bit easier. So, these are our four-legged friends. So, they're part of the trip, or one of the pros of the trip is being around the animals, and it's kind of cool. Rock Creek guys take good care of their stock animals. It's hard work for them, for sure, but they take care. Our people that we have on the section hikes, we do the JMT over about 4 years, just doing short sections. They tend to be a little bit older. They just want to take it easy. Hike with a light day pack. That's why I've got this one on right now. That's all I want to hike with. Alice here, Alice was in her 70s. She'd had cancer, but she was tough. She would just walk slowly and get to camp and have a really good attitude, and she was great to be around and have fun. So, this is kind of a typical group that we might have here. Rock Creek does the food for us. It's nice to have some fresh stuff, oranges, all those things that Louie gets at a resupply. We often have most days. Snacks in the afternoon, salad. The packers tend to be characters, good people to hang out with, make friends with them. So sometimes, Louie was under a small tarp. We'll often take along a big tarp. Mackenzie here worked for Rock Creek for a long time. I think we're making up chocolate pudding here. But we have the bear boxes here. Louie and his backpacking team take the small little round ones. These big ones just go on a mule, and they're bear resistant. So it's nice just to be able to hang out, relax, read. As I said, the animals are often part of the trip. They've all got their own characters. They're inquisitive. They're always trying to get into trouble here. Now we've got the short hair ones, and we've got the long hair ones. A lot of the trails in the Sierra Nevada were built for pack stock. That's often why they're nicely graded. And without pack stock, the trails in the Sierra would be very much different. Some of the trails are easy. Some, such as Glen Pass, can be pretty tricky to get over. The packers don't ride over, they just lead the animals through. And sometimes there's things that happen, such as a big rock on the trail that completely preclude getting the animals through. So you've got to be able to adapt and work with the animals. They need reassuring along the trail here. So Tyler here carries all the stuff to reshoe the horses. That's his animal there. I've forgotten his name. Big, strong horse. Right below Mount Whitney, nice place for a base camp. So on this trip, we actually took the packer up Mount Whitney. He was really keen to do it. He never had. Got him up to the top. He took his water canteen, his cowboy hat, his slicker, and we met all the people from in their REI clothing on the trail as well. And they'd look at him, he'd look at them, and then he'd say, "You seen my mule?" "Lost my mule, Rocket, took off, little black mule." And they'd all say, "No, haven't seen it at all, but we keep our eyes open." And apparently that got back to the Forest Service, and I was asked how come we lost a mule on Whitney. But he was a good guy, Andy. So it's nice just to be able to hang out without working as hard as you do on carrying all your own gear. It's a different experience. Looking out to the Kauai's here, and that's about the size of the pack that you normally have. Nice Sierra water. But like Louie's programs, you end up making friends with people and keeping in touch with them. And same thing with the packers. Make friends with them and see them around town here. So that's just another option to do the JMT. It doesn't have to be hardcore. You can take it more leisurely. The most important thing is just getting out into the mountains and enjoying them. It doesn't matter how you do it, as long as you're out there. So that kind of wraps it up here for us. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to thank Lee for doing his part of it here. We'll give a plug to